She also knows how to time, 9 minutes and 23 seconds. She said 10 minutes. Good evening, first of all. Thanks for having me. Thanks for placing me next to Jill Stewart, who during her reporting days and into her managerial career, she's held firm to the iconic and idealistic function of a journalist, which is to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. She is an expert at doing both. You ask, how does the weekly do what it does, and why is it different from the Times? It can be summed up in 2 words. No fear. When you have nothing to lose, go for it. After all, David found that out with Goliath. Look who fell. In some way, I envy Jill and the crew at the Weekly, regardless of whether it's political news, corruption exposés, music, cultural coverage. They have one thing at their disposal I wish I had more of. Time. Time to seek out, develop, investigate, actually tell a story without having to face this digital stopwatch that forces me to trade facts for seconds on the air. Poor me in the 42nd world I live in. Life's tough, then you die. Oh well, to hell with it. Enough self-pity on with the news or what passes for it. In the electronic end of things, the news in Los Angeles is not in the greatest of shape for 2 reasons, or at least the relating of news. One, the news judgment or lack thereof of the people in this industry on the electronic side. And second, the people who are in charge of producing the information you see, hear, and increasingly get on every form of information dissemination imaginable, from radio, TV, internet, smartphones, smarter pads, etc., etc. Before I go any further, though, and before I let my opinions, which I try very hard not to put on the air, get out here, I will read a disclaimer. This comes from my older brother, who is a very wise and proper attorney. He told me, Pete, if you're going to sound off, you better make sure it's you and not who you're working for. Therefore, the comments I'm about to make today in no way represent the positions, views, practices, policies of my superiors or my employers at KNX 1070 News Radio or CBS. They are my own, based on 34 years of consecutive professional employment in my field in Los Angeles and the advanced degree it has given me, BT, DT, SWU. Been there, done that, still walking upright. And in more recent times, my observations on the disintegration of quality and information passing and distribution in written, verbal, and visual formats, along with an occasional nod of the head or a kick in the butt to the internet. With that out of the way, let's begin. I feel like Cleavon level. Let me whip out this disclaimer here. Let me assert in many ways what makes news in LA nowadays, in the year of our Lord and soon to be possibly the apocalypse, 2012, is part cultural, self-obsessed ego, part population content, who's who in the zoo, who looks nice, who's had the best surgery, and who hasn't been on Harvey Levin's whatever list on TMZ. And part love affair of anything which can be summed up or delivered to you in a matter of seconds with a catchy phrase to illustrate facts, must-see video, or a killer app. Content and importance, let alone relevance to the issues that have an impact on your life, your world, where you live. Your wallet, your shopping habits seem to be coming in a poor second, third, or in some cases, fourth. There is some hope for better news coverage, for no other reason that there are now so many outlets. It's possible there's a place for every kind of information to be disseminated somewhere. All you have to do now is find out where it is, and there's a simple thing that anyone who's a mouse commando or a mouse potato or, one hand, that type of thing, go to Google, type in the words, and amazing one will come up with it. How we do it at the mighty 1070. And for those who are somewhat confused that I'm the 1070, yeah, I did spend 24 years, 9 months at KFWB News 980 before they shifted the format. I won't comment on the reasons behind that. I will just merely say very politely, it was a wonderful place to work. We did a lot in the quarter century I was there. I'm very proud of being there. And whenever certain people in CBS get a little too proud or haughty or whatever, I pull an old tattered piece of paper out of my briefcase, which is my Group W broadcasting ID, and said to one rather arrogant person in CBS corporate, "Excuse me, I come from Westinghouse. We bought you." That sort of put a little shot into it, forget the tingle of the leg, that was something else. At KNX, for the most part, story planning for morning drive are big time, meaning all the people are trapped in cars and they have to listen to us because they want to hear the traffic and everything else that comes with it. It begins about 1 o'clock in the morning. A charming man named Dan Gura, or someone else like Dan, walks in, begins checking the wires, cross-checking the local papers, checking the blogs, last night's TV news, scanning what's coming in from our network feeds. And our second producer walks in 1 hour later, also pours a toxic cup of coffee, sits down and is on the phone within minutes with East Coast or West Coast sources for stories related to everything from international or national issues, business, both in the United States and foreign markets, and with possible input from West Coast sources that don't mind getting woken up at 2 or 3 in the morning and said, hi, would you be willing to talk with us at 22 or 42 after the hour, 3 hours from now? By the time the first living, breathing human reporter actually hits the door at 3:30, those two men have an idea where they're going to be sending all of us, but that is subject to change at a moment's notice. Case in point, Monday, I was skulking around Venice, marvelous place, and looking at things like 40-foot trees that had crunched cars because the wind decided that it was going to have its way with them, and everything else that was being done for cleanup, and that was wonderful. I was going to do that story at 6:03, and at 6:02, 58 or 59, all of a sudden they come in with breaking news about a shooting of a woman at the Sportsman's Lodge in Venice. Well, all of a sudden my story went into the proverbial dumper, and I made it from Venice over to the Sportsman's Lodge in about 22 and a half minutes. And then did a live shot based on 3 or 4 phone calls and some fast information. Nothing in the world like an ex-husband shooting his ex-wife in the head of the Sportsman's Lodge and walking off with 2 kids aged 18 months and 6 months, which means you have attempted murder, possible child abduction, and a potential Amber Alert to get all those motorists trapped in their cars looking for that car somewhere on the road. Breaking news. God, I hate that phrase. It used to be, this is a CBS News bulletin or a special report. Now it's breaking news. Well, news doesn't need to be broken, it needs to be reported. Breaking news meaning something happening right now, which could have a major impact on morning travel or a neighborhood that's just waking up, is a priority at KNX. Scrambling across town as I do in a Chevy Tahoe with enough electronic equipment that if I flip all the switches I can fry a butterball turkey at 50 feet is what you do. And when you do that in rush hour traffic, it's part controlled road rage, part street knowledge, and a constant check, watching, and phone calling to ensure you have something you can pass on to your listeners, because guaranteed, when you get there, within 2 or 3 minutes, they're going to come up with the inevitable panic question. Can you go live? As compared to, can you go dead? Which, if you don't have facts, well, never mind. Getting through morning drive, 5 to 9 o'clock, is only the beginning. The second news meeting begins at 7:30 in the morning with a midday editor, the news director, and other people there, and a new set of anchors, all of whom are throwing ideas in based on what's happened and what they see is going on in Washington, in LA, and things like the council, the courts, and everything else. The cycle repeats itself again at just at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the editors on the afternoon shift and the night shift do the same thing, except the news directors are there. But you have a couple of good, talented writers, people with 15, 20 years plus of news experience in LA, meaning they know how to pronounce Sepulveda, Coenga, and they know what a quesadilla is. And occasional thought or two from the field reporters, like me, you know, Jaffo, just another freaking observer. And then, of course, we have reporters down in Orange County and San Diego. Put that all together, and as Linda Ellerby was fond of saying with a nod to Kurt Vonnegut, and so it goes. For a field reporter like myself, you keep making phone calls, keep something simple. My mom will give me a look. And I owe it to them that I am where I am, because my father and mother both told me. There will come a time in your life when you will have to stand up in front of a group of people, and by force of personality, factual information, and delivery, you will have to compel them to listen to you and to side with your point of view. They did that to me, my older brother, my younger brother, and my younger sister. Mom and Dad, thanks.
Thank you. Matt will be asking the questions, but let me ask a question beforehand. As I understand that you covered the shootout in North Hollywood?
No, I did not.
Forget that. As I understand it,
Where I'll tell you was with my dad, who gave me the alert, as I was ready to go into surgery that morning, and he said, "Are you watching this on television?" I turned it on. There was a mark on the plaster of the walls of my condo where I was living at the time, where I smashed my fist so hard because here I was going to be out of the loop. When many people thought this was a perfect story for me to be at, or to be a part of, or both. I guarantee I could have gotten a hell of a lot more stuff with the cops than going to B&B.
What is the counterpart that you were at? Is there some event that you remember that will be with you the rest of your life? Some event?
There are too many of them. That's the problem. I'm an Angelino, born and bred. My family's been here 108 years. And I've been doing this consecutively. Things that stay in your mind? Sure. First 2 weeks I was on the job in 1985. All of a sudden, we had a methane explosion that leveled large parts of the farmer's market. You want to go on forward from that? Hell, I was driving home in 1994 at January 17th at 4:31 and 15 seconds, and I'd been up about 27 hours at that point on my day off, covering a barricade situation of people who run from Sacramento down to LA. SWAT got them out. I picked up my binoculars from a buddy I left, and midway up the Coenga Pass, guess what? Mother Nature reminded all of us, she is in charge, she owns the landscape, you just rent. After everything quaked and shaked, 15 seconds, and the electrical discharges went off and everything went black, I hit the mic and told my desk, Mobile 4 to base, are you here? We've had a major earthquake. I keep the mic off. 3 seconds later, they came back. You're live in 10 seconds. Yeah. They decided to somehow want to get rid of me on January 17, 1991. They put a check in my hands and a few other items and said go to Washington, D.C. and try to get to Riyadh. I did. Went through 12 missile attacks. They blew up my ship with me on it. And just as I thought I was going to calm down and do a few things, on February 24th, 1991, a missile landed about 3/4 of a mile away from my hotel. When I ran over to see what happened, I was there on the tail end of ambulances and helicopters medevacing people out of the remnants of a building. And when I questioned an American person who was there, who was an advisor to the Saudi government, and he said, "This are military barracks, these are military personnel here." And since he was Saudi, I made a mistake. I assumed, which as you know makes an ass of you and me. Saudi National Guard or Saudi Army? And he looked at me and he said, Americans. These are Americans in this barracks. We probably got 10 to 25 dead. 6 minutes later, at the Dhahran International Hotel, a bunch of people were joking around, insisting that Saddam Hussein couldn't hit the backside of a camel with a broom. And I said, what about the casualties and the dead over at the barracks? And everyone looked at me and said, what the hell are you talking about? I said, no one's reported. And he said, who are you? What the? And I raced into a room with a satellite uplink. And I hit the switch. And I said, Washington, this is Dhahran. Roll call. ABC, are you there? NBC, are you there? CBS, are you there? UPI, are you there? VOA, are you there? And everyone came back. Go, go. This is Dhahran. We have had a Scud strike that has hit a barracks with American personnel. As many as 100 people inside. We have a minimum of 10 to 20 dead and probably 50 to 75 wounded. I paused for 2 seconds. And over the uplink from 22,000 miles came, who is this? What the hell? What's he saying? What's he? And the controller said, all parties, Washington, stand down. Dhahran, it's your story. Go. That was the most 7 nerve-wracking minutes of my life after I finished that story. Because nobody else had corroborated. Nobody else had any facts. Mine was the first information solid out there from eyewitnesses. And when someone finally corroborated it, 8 or 9 minutes later, all my hands did was this. Because if I had screwed up, I would have had to go home because I had just blown it in front of 2 billion people. That keeps you humble. Those are things, Dick, that stick in your mind.
Thank you. Matt?